Hi, this is Nick from Kissing the Pink. And we're on the NEWWAVE podcast.
Welcome back to the NEWWAVE Music Podcast. I'm T-Bone, and along with me is Steve. Today, we're thrilled to have a special guest joining us, the mastermind behind unforgettable hits like Don't Tell Me. And all too soon I jump the moon and find I'm losing my mind. Don't tell me I'm the howling wind. Don't tell me you're the wounded star. Don't tell me I'm the devil's friend. Don't tell me I've gone too far. Blind Vision. Blind visions and no reasons for action. Blind words, blind visions and no reasons for action. Blind words. And Living on the Ceiling. I'm so tall, I'm so tall. You raise me and then you let me fall. I'm so small, I'm so small. Wrap me around your finger, see me fall. We want to welcome Neil Arthur, lead singer of Blancmange. Welcome to the show, Neil. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell us how you and Stephen Luscombe came together to form Blancmange.
Stephen Luscombe.
Luscombe.
Stephen and I met when I was at art college. I was studying illustration down at Harrow College of Art. And Stephen had a friend on the graphics course. And we met when his band that he had with several members of friends who were on at college played in the local bar, college bar. And in fact, I think the first time I saw Stephen performing, he was playing a Hoover on reverse thrust connected to a saxophone.
Interesting.
I thought, I think we've come out the same mode. So no pun intended with us being called Blancmange.
So Neil, can you tell me what were some of the key influences that shaped Blancmange's sound?
Yeah, of course. Well, growing up in the 70s in Lancashire, I was lucky enough to, there weren't many bands that came to Darwin, but the nearest town was Blackburn. And I went to Blackburn and I saw, amongst other people, David Bowie play on the 31st of May, 1973. And I had ticket number 4. So I was very, very keen, very excited. And also it was the Ziggy Stardust tour. And he was just unbelievable, like nothing I'd heard or seen before. Obviously I'd heard Bowie, but we'd actually seen him perform that close up as well. It was just incredible. And it was a kind of a life-changing moment. In terms of where I went with the music I was interested in. Before that, I'd been interested in T-Rex, I still was. And I liked Roxy music. I really liked Roxy music. But it just opened up my mind to other types of music. So from Bowie, Iggy Pop, from Iggy Pop back to Bowie and Eno through to the German so-called krautrock bands like Neu and Can and Cluster. And the Velvet Underground were always kind of a band that I liked. Maybe not quite then. I probably wouldn't have been aware of them in 1973. Maybe a little bit later on, actually. So that was it really. But smatterings of ABBA along, because that was played in the house. Lots of Johnny Cash, lots of Fats Waller, and quite a lot of Tomito. So that was probably one of my first introductions, unknowingly, into electronic sound. So that kind of thing. And, pop music. I really like Leo Sayer's first album, Silverbird. I loved the Carpenters. And I'd like more obscure things, as I said, to, I suppose, Eno's first album, Here Come the Warm Jets, just was on heavy rotation in my house.
Well, now you mentioned kind of different sounds and different concepts, and some of your earlier albums used a good amount of Eastern instruments, such as the sitar. How did you become familiar with those unusual sounds that they would contribute?
Stephen and I were always pretty open-minded about listening to music. We didn't really see ourselves as musicians as such. We were kind of absorbing everything that was around us, musically, culturally. So, it was important to kind of be open-minded. And if you are prepared to kind of listen and keep your eyes open, your ears open and listen, then it's amazing what you observe. And it doesn't all have to be four to the floor and, drums, bass, guitar and vocalist, so anything would do. So, for example, there were lots of radio stations that would play, like Asian radio stations or pirate radio stations would play quite unusual music you come across, and it didn't take much effort to go down to a library and find out about cultural music from around the world. Or, as I said, if you living in London, it's a multicultural society, multicultural city, and a good thing for it, So you see and hear a lot of things.
Your debut album, Happy Families, received critical acclaim and commercial success. What was the creative process like behind this album?
Just a series of mistakes, so and some of the mistakes stayed and some of them didn't. So learn from your errors. Yeah, that's what it was really. So you give a monkey a typewriter, it'll come up with something eventually, So the album was largely obviously written before we signed our deal and fine-tuned when we got in the studio. So quite different from the second album and third albums, but we already had a deal. So those songs came together over a period of years before we were signed. So say from 1980 to 82.
So Living on the Ceiling became one of Blancmange's biggest hits. What was the inspiration behind that song? And did you expect it to resonate with audiences the way it did?
No, of course not. No idea. I mean, if I could write another one, I probably would. but the other side of that is, I'll make a joke about that, but at the same time, I don't know if I'd want to write another one because I'm more interested in writing something different and seeing what happens there. Turning another page, opening another door. The idea behind it was simply I can remember exactly what happened. So I'll leave your listeners to, if they know the song, to decide what they think it may or may not be about. Because it'd be like an artist standing next to a painting and explaining,
right?
Or an author telling you what the last page of a book is, So I think it's better that everybody just makes their own minds up about those things. But in terms of the inspiration for it, Stephen came around one day. I was living in North London, and he came around to the place I was staying in. We were going to rehearse, and he borrowed an 808 rhythm unit off a friend, Andy Burnham, and he came in and he borrowed the rhythm unit and recorded. We couldn't keep it, so he'd recorded a rhythm track. Also, he borrowed a synthesizer. We didn't own our own synth, and he borrowed it and put a very basic bass line down. And I'll sing the bass line. He went dun 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 dun. That was it. Just going on and on. We put that. It's on a cassette, so we put the cassette on, and we had another cassette machine which had a recorded on it, a little microphone, inbuilt mic. And we recorded some of our rehearsal sessions just in case something happened whilst we were. Mainly nothing happened, But this time I'm playing guitar, Stephen's playing the keyboards, and I played a melody. And we both looked at each other and went, "That's interesting." Stopped the tape, listened to the recording back, and the melody I played was la da da dee da 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 dee da 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 da. And that melody obviously is Living on the Ceiling melody, if you didn't recognise it. It was really bloody badly sung, that. But that was the melody. But it wasn't what I'd intended to play. And the mistake was much better than what I intended to play. So I learnt the mistake. And that became the melody. And it took us, in a way, that melody and the exotic aspect to it. took us on a journey, so so Indian instruments, Indian percussion, and a trip to Egypt.
So Blancmange's music often explores themes of technology, society, and human relationships. How do those themes inspire your songwriting?
Well, the themes are just there to be observed, really. So I'm kind of interested in what's between the cracks rather than what's on the surface of the pavement. If you imagine you're walking down the street, and I'm kind of interested in the nitty gritty and just taking another angle at it. I've written a song called Anodyne.
Here's a question. I hope you can find the answer. Anodyne with me. Anodyne with me.
The song's written about people snoring. The song's written about the state of the world and greedy, selfish bastards. Some of it's disguised, and some of it less so. I also wrote a song. I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but I wrote a song called Starfucker.
Stars are supernova models, frozen without any of your troubles. Starfucker, a mass hysteria. You're a starfucker. Well, I'm staying well clear of you.
And that's effectively, I don't normally say what things will be about, because I think but it's pretty obvious what it's about. So sometimes, you buy the song, you get a hammer with it, Doink. You need a bat on the head to understand.
So let's change the subject just a touch here. Around 2011, Stephen left the band due to some serious health issues, but you decided to continue the band. Do you still keep in touch with Stephen?
Yeah, very much so. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go into detail, and that's out of respect for Stephen.
Yeah,
because I love him dearly. But I saw Stephen the other week, and he's not been very well again at all. Anyway, I went round and I gave him a big cuddle. We had a chat, and one of the first things he asked, I showed him actually, was the artwork to the new compilation, and it brought a big smile to his face because he got the reference straight away, the laundry basket and the reference to our very first EP, Irene and Mavis. And he said it's so Blancmange, and that's quite a compliment coming from Stephen. So we keep in touch.
In the late 2010s and on, you've tried different music styles, including more experimental sounds. Was that an organic extension of where you were heading, or was it just a desire to try something different?
I don't really analyze it. I think if anybody knows Blancmange's music other than the singles, I would say that we've always had a bit of a fascination with different types of experimentation, albeit in the 80s within pop. It was a bit of an experiment for us to try and have a song in those days. So, and now I get to work with some really interesting people. Benge, I work with on all the Blancmange projects, and we also have another project, Fader. And to have the experience of working with these people means that you're able to learn. And if you're learning, the creative process is always more exciting. So experimentation comes quite naturally. But the other thing is, I don't really, most of these records that have been released since, including 2011, not that the ones in the 80s weren't done exactly how I wanted them to be done, but they've been released, handed over, finished, not handed over as demos. They're handed over when they go out the studio. It's a great word, this, in terms of describing what happens when you've finished a mix, and you send it off, it gets mastered, and then hopefully either via my record label, or luckily for me at the moment via London Records, who I was signed to originally. To be back with them is just amazing for me. Amazing. I hope it is for them as well. It's such a privilege. It's such a privilege. But I hand that over, and it gets released, and that's the word I mean, released. And it's not mine anymore. It's not mine. It's whoever listens to it. It's theirs, and they can make of it whatever they want. There's nothing I can do. It's better not. I hope people enjoy it, but it's released, and it's up to other people to make if they want to, make their minds up about it. And it's only a song. They're only songs. So
That's a fascinating way of looking at it. Absolutely.
So, Noel, if we can ask you about your last studio album, Private View, it showcases a continuation of Blancmange's sonic exploration. What were some of your inspirations behind this album?
I think it was coming out of also the world had kind of been in a state of lockdown. It's a terrible word, lockdown. The only time I'd ever heard the word lockdown used before was when you had reports about there being an incident or a riot in a jail.
Yeah. So
the whole world was in jail, I suppose, and the terrors and the horrors and the sadness of all that. And then, of course, we haven't come out of it. It's just that there are still things going on, but the immediate kind of the pandemic and government's attitudes towards it and what have you. So there was a lot of time to reflect. But I wanted to write an album that kind of looked towards a future, and whatever that future will be. And my God, we've walked into a future, haven't we? With all the problems in the world. It'd be great if it wasn't for the humans, wouldn't it? Animals are great, but the humans, some of them, honestly, what a mess. They need to take a good look at themselves. They really do. But so, from writing songs like Sometimes These, it's got a double meaning on it, hasn't it? Sometimes These.
Sometimes these we're all going through. Sometimes these, my friends, sometimes these.
But you could take it so many ways, and I suppose the message is in the title, really, that we are going through sometimes. And then there's a song on there which I suppose in a way telegraphs it, kind of sends a story out about Blancmange, really, and many people hopefully people will be able to relate to that so many things that you don't think are connected. I'm not very nostalgic, but I suddenly realised that all these things, this is where I am, and all these things are connected. The odd sock at the bottom of the drawer, whatever it is that you find in the back of the dog hair in the back of the boot of the had and all these things connect to make something that kind of makes your awareness of your being. I had great fun sonically. I had a lot of fun with Benj making this album because he's got the most incredible collection of synthesizers. Bloody hell, we don't half use them. One thing we do when we're making an album, we only eat orange food at lunchtime. And that's all. We've always done that. We only eat orange food at lunchtime. Yeah. I mean, we make up for it in the evening. I mean, we have every colour in the evening, but at lunchtime we only have orange. So I'll leave it to your imagination to figure out what we eat. But it is only orange. So it's quite dark a lot. I realise, some of the Blancmange stuff now kind of reels between kind of, there is dark humour and there's some kind of lighter moments and there's kind of slower and some energetic, more kind of energetic tracks in there. But the thing is, I don't really think about making a single. I mean, we release singles every so often because one comes up like Sometimes These and Reduced Voltage. They went down very well. But they weren't, I don't set out to write a single like, for example, we did when we did the ABBA cover.
The train back home again. Undoubtedly, I must have read the evening paper then. Oh, yes, I'm sure my life was well within its usual flow. The day before you came.
We said, well, obviously that's going to be a single. Or when we did Don't Tell Me, in fact, the record company said we need a single. So Stephen and I went into the studio. We went into Blackwing, which is where Depeche Mode, that's their studio they used at Blackwing, and we used that as well quite often. So we went in there, and I think Vince was downstairs working on his Yazoo stuff. And Stephen and I came up with Don't Tell Me, played it to the record company, and lo and behold, a week later, we were in there, not demoing it, but we were recording it down at Psalm East. And thankfully for us, it was a hit. But it was, we were conscious that we were kind of going, right, let's try and write a single. I don't try and write a single. I try and write songs these days. I don't just write songs, or I just make noises. Make noises and put them together. See what happens.
Neil, as I understand it, with Stephen no longer in Blancmange, you now use session musicians. I mean, obviously you mentioned Benge, but do you stick with specific people, or does that change per album?
Oh, I've worked with some good friends who I work with. Of course, some of them are session musicians, but they're friends and musicians. They're friends first and foremost. Last year, I had an album out called The Remainder. So it's called Evensong, with a band called The Remainder, another project. The Remainder will be opening for Blancmange on tour in the UK. That's Liam Hutton, who plays with Blancmange, plays with lots of people. He's a great musician in his own right, but he'll be playing drums with Blancmange. So he'll be playing with Remainder, and he's playing with Blancmange. And Finlay Shakespeare, so the three of us did the Remainder album, and Finlay and Liam have played with Blancmange for a number of years. And so we'll be doing the Remainder set first, and then going off, putting our wigs on. No, we won't. We won't put our wigs on. And we'll be taking them off. So we'll be taking them off. That's right. I knew there was something. We'll be taking them off, and then we'll be getting the sousaphone out, and the trombone, and the penny whistle, and coming back on stage as Blancmange. And Chris Pemberton has played many times with Blancmange. I was out with Chris last year, so it's quite a close-knit group of people who play with Blancmange. Every so often, David Rhodes comes back and picks up the guitar and comes and does a few. Well, David's quite often there when we record. Doesn't always come out live with us. Blancmange has always been, even back in the 80s, quite a flexible unit. We were effectively two people, but sometimes it would be three, sometimes it would be five, sometimes back to two. And at the moment, it varies between 2 and 3. It depends what we're doing and how we feel, really.
So you mentioned touring, and those dates are in the UK. But is that the extent of it? Is selfish, of course, but is there any chance of having a US leg?
Oh, God, I'd love to come over to. I'd love to come back to America with Blancmange, and we've been asked, and it's we've been asked so many bloody times, and it's never quite worked out. I'd love to do that. I really, really like to play. It would be brilliant. Who knows? Somebody might listen to this and go, I'm going to make that happen. So hopefully somebody will come back and make it happen. That would be great,
I hope so.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be a dream for, I think, both Steve and myself.
Oh,
absolutely.
Thank you very much for saying that, but it would be a dream for us and all. So,
Neil, a question we had from one of our listeners was if you could share a memorable story or anecdote from your time touring or recording with Blancmange.
Okay, well, there are plenty. So maybe because you're in America, I should tell the Madonna story. I'm recording at Sigma Sound in New York. We're recording with John Luongo's producing us. Stephen's in the studio programming up a synth, and I have got one of the early stereo versions of the Walkman that records. So I'm recording everything there is, with a view to putting it on one of the songs on the second Blancmange album. Well, I'm just going around recording everything. And at this point, I'm outside Sigma Studios where the lift is, and I'm recording the lift, and the lift's coming up. So I'm going, that's a good noise. The door's open, and this young girl comes out with a baseball hat, not a baseball bat, a baseball hat on, and says, "Hello, how are you?" And I said, "I'm fine, thanks very much. How are you?" And she has a pizza delivery bag on her shoulder, a big square bag on her shoulder, not that big, but a square bag on her shoulder. And I clocked this, and she said, "Do you know where Jelly Bean is?" And I said, Jelly Bean, he's in studio. He wasn't in our studio, obviously, because we're in it. He's in one. I said, he's in that studio over there. And she said, "All right, thanks very much. See you later." And I said, "I'll see you then." And I carry on recording. And I'm going, bloody hell, Jelly Bean's having pizza for dinner. You know, he's having pizza for... And I said, I really fancy that. I don't really fancy having Chinese again tonight. So I'll go in the studio and I'll see if we can get pizza. So I go in the studio and said, did you just... said, what were you doing out there? I said, oh, just chatting to some delivery, somebody delivering something. I said, they're having pizza in that studio. He said, you daft bugger. He said, that's not pizza delivery. He said, that was Madonna coming in with her records. She got, the bag she had was full of records and it just looked like a pizza delivery. That was Madonna, you daft bugger. Anyway, so there you go. That's one of there are lots of stories.
That's great. Blancmange's upcoming release, Everything is Connected, the best of Blancmange 1979 to 2024, is highly anticipated, especially with the inclusion of the new single, Again I Wait for the World.
Again, I wait for the world. I'm late again. Funny how time slips away cold. I have no excuse, but I have an excuse. But why should I tell you then? I know that I'm wrong, but I want to be right. It's just the world that's gone out of time.
A song you began writing 45 years ago. Can you share with us the journey behind this track and what it means to you?
I think it was just coming out of the Victorian period, and I was in a stagecoach coming back into London. No, I was in another band at Art College called L360 with Tony Fretton and Roger Phillips. Sometimes Stephen would come down and play, not very often because he thought we were too serious. And Lawrence Stevens came down and played drums a couple of times, but the core of the band was Tony, Roger, and myself. Anyway, I'd written this idea of a song called Again I Wait for the World. I suppose I didn't have the experience, and maybe I still haven't got the experience. I'm still trying to learn, but I just didn't know where to go with the song, and none of us probably did, you know. And Blancmange seemed to kind of get a little bit more momentum. This is before we got a deal or anything. And I think Stephen and I just found it easier, the two of us working together, and L360 just seemed to fizzle out a bit, you know. But we wrote some songs together. And last year I was... no, it wasn't. It was a year before. We were moving house, and I was getting a load of stuff out of the attic. And in the attic, there was a box of cassettes, which I was going to take to the dump and chuck away. And my manager said, no, don't chuck them away. Put them somewhere that maybe you can get at some time you might want to listen to them. Or some of them were recorded on Porter Studios, and they were demos for songs. And it might be quite interesting to go through them. So off they went into a lockup. But when I opened the box, at the top of the box, near the top, there were two cassettes I recognised straight away. And one was L360, and the other one was a Blancmange one. So I got them both out and I had to listen to a little bit, which I'm not too... it's not often I do that. But the L360 really caught my attention. And there was a germ of a song on there that was recorded at a rehearsal, just didn't even finish. But it stayed in my head for about a year. And last year I realised I thought I had the answer to finishing it. And then with Benj, down at his studio in Cornwall, we finished it off in January. So 45 years later, I managed to put a full stop at the end of it. You know, it's done now.
So this Greatest Hits, which comes out on May 10th, is just loaded. 28 songs on 2 CDs. One moment, your website said it was sold out. It seems to be back in stock now, though. It must be selling well, so you must find that encouraging.
Yeah, I can't... I'm not sure. It's nice that people are, hopefully buying it. I'm really flattered by that. And I did hear the news earlier in the week that they're going to have to do another pressing and another kind of run of it, which is good.
And this Greatest Hits is also available on Bandcamp. A lot of artists use them to distribute their music now. Do you find that the easiest way to get your music to the masses at this time?
Bandcamp's fantastic. It's great for the artists. And every so often they have kind of a Friday where they'll, kind of waiver their commission and stuff like that. So I think it's, the more that happens, the better. When you've got these, situations with streaming that the artists just aren't being remunerated properly, then, a lot of the artists need all the bloody help they can get to encourage them, particularly young artists, to create music and let the world hear it.
So definitely buy it on Friday, because that's when you guys get the most music. That's to our listeners.
Yeah, well, you can buy it there, or you'll be able to buy it on our website.
That's right. That's right.
And if you're lucky enough, it'll have my scroll on it.
Very
I spent
nice.
several days with cramp from signing my name. I could have signed somebody else's name. Maybe I sold more.
So Neil, in the 80s, Blancmange had 3 albums, and since 2010, you've released 15. Where does this incredible burst of creativity come from?
Well, I'm off the leash, really. So it's maybe I should be tethered up. I don't know, but I think I'm happiest when I'm being creative, and it just feels like the right thing to do. The opportunities are there to work with, as I mentioned earlier, amongst, I've mentioned Benj, but I get to work with Jez Bernalt on the Near Future project. I've mentioned Finley and Liam with The Remainder. I was working with Vince Clarke and Benj on a covers album. There's I don't know if you've heard of a fantastic artist called Ed Dowie. Done some. If you've not heard his music, please listen to it. But Ed and I have got some music that we started, and no doubt will get finished at some point. So, and all these projects kind of make you, being involved in them makes you more whole, because you're learning all the time. You're just learning all the time from, if you're prepared to listen, look.
So Neil, in addition to Blancmange, you've mentioned that you're involved with another band, or you're involved with another project called The Remainder. I recently had a chance to listen to the album Evan's Song. I really like the track's Broken Manhole cover.
I remember you said broken manhole cover, dead man's suit cover, dead man's suit cover, broken manhole cover.
The Remainder.
And no extra cost, and the demons on your shoulder smolder while they urge you greedily onward. Smolder while they urge you greedily onward.
And Hoarfrost.
And set us up in crystal. Librarian points out a book on the shelf. I point to the sign on the wall. Breathe on frost.
Can you share with our listeners a bit more about The Remainder and the inspiration behind the band or the album came to be?
Liam's been playing with Blancmange for a long time now, 9 years. And shortly after we started working together, my manager mentioned that Liam had written some songs, some ideas, instrumental parts, suggested that we might work together. And that journey began. So Liam and I started exchanging files, every so often getting together. And we found ourselves with most of an album. In fact, enough tracks for an album. But there was something stopping us kind of finishing it. And we weren't quite sure what it was. And then we thought, why not ask Finley to have a listen to this, see what he makes of it. So Finley Shakespeare was, we had a chat with him, and he had a listen. And then it reinvigorated the project and spurred us on. And Finley's input, being crucial, helped us to finish the album. And we mixed it at Finley's studio down in Bristol. So it was the album took a few years to get together, stop and start, because we all had other commitments. Finley's a musician in his own right. He has his own releases. He makes synthesizers with a company called Future Sound Systems, and Liam goes off drumming with various other people. So he's done Liam's done a lot of work, and we eventually finished the album. That's really the story. I mean, as for what the songs are about, again, I'll just reiterate, I think it's for other people to make their minds up, but effectively it's a lot of electronics and some real drums and my gob over the top of it.
Well, it's a great album. I encourage our listeners to seek that one out as well.
Oh, Steve, thank you very much indeed for saying that.
You're welcome. So Neil, I'm really jealous with our UK listeners that get to see you in tour, that get to see your tour that kicks off on May 16th, I believe, in Newcastle, and runs through June 3rd and through Southampton. It's really impressive to see that you're pulling double duty with the upcoming tour, not only performing with Blancmange, but also the support band, The Remainder. Sounds like our audiences are going to be in for a great show from both Blancmange and The Remainder for those tour dates.
Well, maybe one day we'll be able to bring the whole package over to America. Sooner the better, really, I think.
Oh, I agree.
So, Neil, looking ahead, what can fans expect from Blancmange in the terms of future projects?
I'm writing a couple of new albums, actually, Blancmange albums. So, and Benj and I planning a new Fader album. I've got an instrumental album, another Nil by Mouth. So that'll be Nil by Mouth 6. There's a near future album. The second one's ready to be mixed. And I mentioned earlier that Vince, Benj and myself have worked on an album of covers. And there's no date for that at all, but it's when the time is right, it will be mixed. And
I want to hear that one for sure.
Yeah. So there are other things, as I mentioned, Ed Dowie, Ed and I have done some music together, so it'd be lovely to finish that off. So there's a lot of stuff. I might even get a chance to do some more music with my son. We did Late for Some as an EP a number of years ago, and we plan to do another one, so we'll do some more together.
Finally, Neil, what's the best way for our listeners to keep up with Blancmange?
You'll find it on the in the food section in most supermarkets.
The dessert section?
Yeah, just desserts. No, you well, probably go to our website, which is blancmange.co.uk, and then all the links to the various social media platforms are at the bottom of the first page. Or you'll find us on Twitter and kind of the rest of them.
And Bandcamp, of course.
Well, maybe not so much on Twitter, but we are on there. But Instagram seems to be quite popular, and of course Bandcamp. There you'll definitely find us on Bandcamp, and you'll see the rest of the catalogue there as well. So the other projects that I've been talking about, they're all on there as well. So it's a fantastic platform.
Well, Neil, thanks again for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. To all our listeners out there, we highly recommend picking up Everything Is Connected, the Best of Blancmange, and exploring your extensive collection of prior albums that you can find on Bandcamp. Best of wishes on the upcoming tour.
Steve, thank you very much indeed for inviting me on the show. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks again for Neil Arthur for joining us from Blancmange. Again, highly recommend seek out his albums. Everything Is Connected, as well as his extensive catalog on Bandcamp. I think you guys will like that. And looking ahead of what's coming up on our next episode, you guessed it, we're going to be having another interview. This time we're going to be joined by a new wave icon, Thomas Dolby. We really hope you guys join us for that one.
If this is your first time listening, we thank you and ask that you please subscribe. That's a great way to support us. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for New Wave Music Podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode.